Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is going to be electrical safety and what is actually required. Today, we will actually be holding a panel discussion on the topic with three esteemed guests that I'd like to introduce now. So we have Jerry Zion, Boyd Campbell, and Benjamin Roberts on the panel today. And what they're going to be able to offer are three different viewpoints on electrical safety. Jerry Zion is an employee of Fluke Biomedical here, and he's our global training manager with decades in the field. Boyd Campbell manages Southeastern Biomedical, one of our sales rep companies in the United States, and has an extensive background as a biomed himself. And Benjamin Roberts, similar, but he's coming from an educational background. So he's an instructor here at North Seattle College, and he'll be able to offer his perspectives on electrical safety. So I think it'll be a very colorful conversation. And last but not least, me. I'll be the moderator today. My name is Michael Raich. I'm the Senior Portfolio Manager here at Fluke Biomedical. And before we get into the actual discussion, I wanted to invite Jerry to walk us through some general thoughts on electrical safety. What it is, why it's hazardous, and why and how it should be tested before we jump into the meat of the discussion. So Jerry, why don't I hand it over to you to take it away?
Great, thanks, Mike. You can go to the next slide. So I just want to review to begin with what is the nature and impact of electric shock, whether it's a macro shock, which is typically a shock that you can feel, versus microshock, which typically is not able to be felt, but it matters, especially to patients who have indwelling catheters, especially those kinds of catheters that are placed directly in the heart itself, but also patients that are receiving transesophageal echocardiographic imaging, where that transducer is sitting in the esophagus right behind the heart. So not in the heart, but right behind it with just a little bit of tissue in between. And so those patients are very vulnerable. So just historically, originally, when we started bringing electromedical devices into the hospital, this was 60s and 70s-ish, what happened was we had a higher death rate all of a sudden, and nobody could figure out why. The reason was we were electrocuting these patients, and we discovered why this is risky. So that's really the background. If you want more depth on that, we have in our medical device quality assurance program, we have a course in there about electrical safety, introduction to electrical safety, that I think you will find quite interesting. So moving forward, Mike, to the next slide, thanks. The key here is safety and reducing the risk of injury or death to the patient. That's why we make the measurements. Yeah, there are regulatory requirements, and we'll talk about where those come from in a little bit. But hospital beds, electric beds, surrounding environment, electric things that get plugged into the wall, ECG leads, transesophageal echo probes, and many other electromedical sources of leakage current. Thing to remember here is it's not if leakage current will happen, it will. The question is how much and where is it flowing? And make sure that we minimize that's always minimize the risk of injury by keeping that leakage current low within the requirements that are built into international and local national standards about electrical safety and minimum performance. Okay, Mike, go ahead. So we have to test, and electrical safety analyzers are specialized to be able to do these tests. And why and how specialized? They include the test loads required in accordance with the international and local national standards. Those are built in. So it's not just any old DMM. Could you do that? Maybe, if the measurement ranges are small enough, but then you have to come up and build your own load. You don't want to do that. So electrical safety analyzers are the test instrument that we're going to use to make these electrical safety measurements, whether you use ours or whoever's you're going to use. So we hope that you use ours. Go ahead, Mike. All right, so in general, there are international standards. The big important one here, especially to medical device manufacturers for doing their design type testing, their design validation testing, is the IEC 60601-1. Now, we have a local national standard here in the United States, AAMI ANSI ES 601, which is harmonized and the direct equivalent of this IEC standard. That said, and while we might use this standard for incoming inspection, that would be an appropriate thing to do, because then we have a very comparable measurement value and test workflow compared to what the manufacturer did before they shipped that medical device to us. In the United States, we have some other things that we can consider. Again, when we look internationally, the IEC 62353, which is a subset of the 60601-1, is what we would use appropriately for repeated year over year over year for our scheduled maintenance electrical safety testing. In the United States, we have an electrical code, the NFPA 99, which we're going to talk about more later. So these are for recurring testing and post-repair. And the reason we use these is the 60601-1 includes tests that would shorten the useful life of the medical device. So we don't want to do that. So internationally, we have agreed about that, and we have these shorter version tests that we use in accordance with whichever the code or the standard that we're going to use. There's another standard that you may have heard of, the IEC 61010, and this is used for design, implementation, and installation validation testing of clinical laboratory devices, but not intended for repeated use. The 61010 is a very big standard, and it is used in the design and development of medical devices and our test instruments, but typically where we worry about it for electrical safety is in clinical lab equipment. So after the installation has occurred and we have the turnover for the clinical lab equipment for clinical use, at that point we would revert to NFPA 99 or the IEC 62353 for further periodic testing. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
All right, so thank you, Jerry. I wanted to kick us off with an initial poll question to get us started, because we want to make today as interactive as possible and tailor the discussion to your inputs and where you guys are on your electrical safety journey. So with that, I wanted to kick off the first question, which is, do you perform electrical safety tests on all of your devices at least annually? Yes, no, or I don't know. And we'll give you I think about 45 seconds to answer, and then we'll start the discussion based off of what you guys have to say here. The question should be open.
Yep, it's open. Responses are coming in, Mike. And we'll give attendees about another 30 seconds before we close the poll. It's looking really good. Responses are about 74% of attendees have voted. About another 10 seconds and we will close. And I will share the results. And now we will close the poll and I will share the responses. So about 69% indicated yes, 24% indicated no, and 7% indicated I don't know.
Well, awesome. Let me turn the results there over to the panel here. What do you guys think about those answers?
This is Ben. This is really not surprising to me for a couple of reasons. First, historically, before the Center for Medicaid and Medicaid Services, CMS, came out, a lot of places and had their 100% on-time completion requirement. They had, for preventive maintenance, they had the annual requirement. So this doesn't surprise me with an almost 70% for that electrical safety. And then later on, we'll talk about the alternative equipment maintenance program. But this really does not surprise me for that, for the annual inspection, to make sure that that's happening. So it also makes me happy to see that. And some of the upcoming poll questions is going to dive into what we're looking at for the electrical safety. But in general, this is makes me happy to see that the testing's happening, but doesn't surprise me. Boyd, how about you?
Well, actually, Ben, I am a little surprised at this. I thought it would be closer to more of a 50-50, because what we're seeing a lot of times out there now, and you alluded to it, are the alternate equipment maintenance programs that are going on out there, and what the different accreditation agencies are allowing the hospitals to do. And it seems like a lot of times when we go into the hospitals, we see more of that going on, where maybe they're not testing all of their monitors at least annually, where they're maybe doing a portion of it. Now, in order to be able to do that, of course, you know, you can't just go out and say, well, I'm just going to start doing these every 2 years. Of course, you have to have some kind of empirical data to go back on to do that. So the hospitals, you know, are starting to gather that. And one of the things to discuss, I guess, amongst yourselves here is, if you have a policy for that, how long do you go back and look at that data over how many years to decide, yes, this needs to be less frequent, or it needs to be more frequent even? We forget about that sometimes as well. And also we can use some of the benchmarking data that organizations such as ECRI, ECRI as a lot of people call it, have put out there to use, and you can use that benchmark data to adjust it from what the manufacturer says. Or I've been doing this for 34 years. When I first came in the field, you've done everything at least annually, and a lot of stuff every 6 months at that point. So it's a good discussion to have amongst your folks within your department there. Okay, what is required for the frequency now, and can I vary that frequency? And if I do, what data do I have to gather or collect to do that on?
It's interesting that when we start looking in a little bit more detail on NFPA 99 in the United States, there is a requirement to do electrical safety testing at least annually. However, the question then becomes, during when must I make measurements versus when is it just a visual inspection? We can talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation, but there's that to look at. The other thing is, it's really useful to adhere to a risk-based assessment, especially if you're doing the alternative equipment maintenance plan and setting your policy around that. So again, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that, but a risk-based assessment helps you determine how risky will it be if I choose to reduce the amount of inspections that I'm going to do, and especially if we're going to reduce the measurement data collection.
All right, no, this is a great first point, and I think it's a good opportunity to move on to our second question. Before I move to that, there is a question from the audience that I think will tee up what's upcoming here. But there was a question around, many different pieces of equipment have different electrical safety standards and test parameters in the service manuals. Which one supersedes the other, international standards or manufacturer standards? And think about that as the group moves on to the second poll question, which is, does everybody in your facility do electrical safety testing the same way? Yes, no, or I don't know.
And the poll has been launched. We'll give attendees.
So while we're answering the poll question, I'd like to address that specific question of what supersedes. So the stricter requirement supersedes in most cases, and really you need to refer back to the point of who has jurisdiction. But if something has a stricter testing requirement, that's what I would recommend referring to, is looking at what has the stricter testing requirement. So if something says look for a half a ohm and something else is looking for a 1 ohm, test to the half a ohm, or vice versa. If it's looking for 0.25 ohms, go for that. So that's really my recommendation. If there's any questions, refer to your management or your environment of care policies. So look at your documentations and refer to your management or your administrations for your policies and procedures and your documentation. But that's your safe bet's going to your stricter requirement.
And one real quick thing to add on to that, basically, whatever you're going to do, you need to have a policy and you follow that policy. When your accreditation agency comes in, that's one of the biggest things they look at. You say you're going to do it, whatever it is, are you doing that?
All right, thanks, guys. Edna, do we have the results?
We do. I'm actually going to jump in here, guys. This is Dan again. The results here, 51% said yes, 26 no, and 23% I don't know.
So this is where having a standardized workflow or test procedure is really, really important. It's not just going out and doing the testing and guessing, oh yeah, well, I think I do it this way in the test in a particular order that suits me. No. Everybody needs to do the test the same way, step by step, whatever the policy that you have written down in your medical device quality assurance program says that you're going to do. Again, for audit trail. The standardization of the testing is really important, and we'll talk about why that's important a little bit later on. But garbage in, garbage out, let's make sure we don't have garbage going into our assessment based on results.
And this is where you need to be in contact with your facilities or maintenance department. Remember, when you're being surveyed, they're looking at the complete environment of care. You may be doing the medical devices, your facilities may be doing the beds, or may be doing some other things. You may have a bed shop. So this is when you need to make sure that all of your shops are doing the same thing and doing it the same way, because once again, it often falls under that same environment of care.
And that's a really good point, Boyd. And I want to thank those that are participating that said no or I don't know for just that awareness, because that's one of the biggest things when I was working in the field is having the biomed shop, the electronic shop, and the facility shop having different policies about equipment coming in and just having that communication. Sometimes there was a rough relationship between the different shops, or just not even a real communication, but having those good relationships between the different shops that do the electrical safety testing and having that standardization is key. Not just the documentation, but having that open communication to say, hey, we are changing the policy, or this is that policy. It is a good practice. And I think that's important to realize that it's not just the biomed shop or the facility shop as acting independently for this. It's the whole facility, as the question here is asking. And I think that's a really good thing that you're pointing out, Boyd.
Yeah, and another thing to go along with this, we're not talking about test automation here, but if you have an automated system, an automated software, everybody does it the same way every time. That's a wonderful thing.
And I think you guys have done a good job talking about who does what in the standardization of the procedure. But what about things like visual inspection? Do those have to be standardized?
Oh, that's a good point, because who under NFPA 99 in the United States, and I'm going to give a little bit away here before we get to that, the person that actually does the visual inspection isn't necessarily the biomed, it's the clinical staff. Interestingly enough, we'll talk more detail about that when we get to the NFPA 99, but that's a good point, Mike, a very good point.
All right, then I think we'll move on to the next one now. And thanks to everyone who's sending in questions. I'm just trying to figure out which buckets to fit them in as we go through. So I wanted to ask the question, when do you perform electrical safety testing? Is it at incoming inspection of new equipment, whether it's rented, borrowed, or whatever? Is it part of your scheduled performance verifications, preventive maintenance? Or is it after any repair or modification where the case is open?
And Mike, the poll question has been launched. Responses were coming in. About 30 seconds, and about half of the attendees have voted.
When you return it to the manufacturer was option D.
And so we're going to give attendees about another 15 seconds before we close the responses. And responses are now, the poll is now closing. And I can share the results with you. So 83% indicated incoming inspection of new equipment rented or borrowed. 86% indicated as part of scheduled performance verifications. 83% also indicated after any repair or modification where the case is opened. And 14% indicated when you return it to the manufacturer.
All right, so panel, what do you guys think?
Really interesting results here, especially though when you return it to the manufacturer, which unless you assumed that after repair included whether you do it in-house or outsource that repair, post-repair, versus when you before you send it. So let me give you a before you send it scenario. If you have a transesophageal echocardiographic transducer that is being cleaned between patients, one place that the electrical safety testing needs to be done under a standard of care now, not the minimum performance and safety standards that we've been talking about, but in accordance with the standard of care. If that test is done by central processing staff and it fails, they should be contacting you, and that's a great time to do a measurement, another leakage current test where you measure the amount of leakage current, because they may not have that actual value reported, and then you include that leakage current test result with the TEE probe when you return it either to the manufacturer or to a third party that's going to refurbish it, or you're going to do an exchange. That's a key bit of information that's important to them. So that would be a good time to do electrical safety testing as you or before you return the device to the manufacturer.
Yeah, and I'll speak to the first one here with incoming inspection. NFPA 99 actually makes it fairly clear that you are to perform electrical safety testing anytime a piece of equipment, patient-related equipment, comes into your facility. Now, there are some examples where it may be double insulated, where you can't, but anything that comes into your facility, you need to remember you are responsible for that. In this litigious society we have now, we know how people will try to find anything they can. So if we are doing our incoming inspections, if we're doing our safety testing on that, that takes one thing out of it, that yes, we can prove we did our due diligence when this came in, and it doesn't matter who owned it because it is in our facility. So it is literally ours to verify at that point.
Good point.
And I will also speak to the after repair modification when the case is opened. That's also called out in the NFPA 99 too. So I was surprised that got the 83%, such as the option A. So I was also found this interesting with that statistics here, like you, Jerry.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, all of these examples of situations in which you want to do measurements in your electrical safety testing are best practice items. So if you want your biomed department to be functioning world-class, best practice, you ought to be doing every one of these.
So I'll share one last comment from the questions box here. You have to test it post-repair upon arrival back to the hospital. Pre-send is to ensure device status for comparison when it returns. So there are applications for this, and thank you for sharing that example. But with that, we'll move on to the next question.
Good.
And I would agree with that. Like I tell all my students, trust but verify. And if you don't have something to verify against, well, you know, data is helpful with that. So if you are measuring before you send it out, that's a really good data point to compare to. So I completely agree with whoever made that remark.
All right, so the next question is, do you document electrical safety test result measurement values? Yes or no? So are you recording the values of your measurements, or are you a pass-fail organization?
All right.
We want to know what you're doing, regardless of what anybody says you have to do. What are you doing? That we're looking for information from you. So please consider that and respond.
All right, we're going to give you about 10 more seconds here. This is a quick yes/no answer. So get your answers in, and we'll close the poll. All right, so we have 76% yes, 24 no.
Okay, well, so under NFPA 99, if the testing is just visual, then, and no matter who's doing it, then there are no measurement values to document. However, at those times when, under any of the regulatory standards, any other time that you're doing a measurement, that you're required to do a measurement, you should be collecting and documenting the value of that measurement, even under pass-fail criteria. So, but in all cases, we'll go back to policy again. Do what your policy says you're going to do, because otherwise it's going to bite you on audit trail.
And one thing I would say, if you are not putting down your electrical safety test measurement values, make sure that you have the standard, say for ground wire resistance, must be less than 0.5 ohms. Make sure that that's spelled out so we know what, or they will know what is passing, what is your measurement, what is your standard that you're going against. So that way you can look at it in that sense. And I'm going to take a little side note on this here as well. You know, we're talking about putting on our measurement values, but also some of the accreditation agencies out there require that when you go out and do a safety test, that you record what device, what safety analyzer you're using to do that safety test with, and either record the serial number of the device or your ID number, which can be traced back to that serial number. And that way, if you have a device, your safety analyzer goes out for calibration, it comes back and it was out of tolerance, then you can know exactly, okay, what devices did we test with this unit? And then you can go back and do a sampling of your devices, and you can say, okay, here are the ones we did. You go back and you do, say, a 10%, and this will, again, will be in your policy, whatever you choose your policy. And if you see that 10% everything is good, well, maybe you don't have to go back and check 100% of all the devices for that last year that you use your electrical safety analyzer on. So that is important as well. Again, there's softwares and things out there that'll help you to do that, to accomplish that, but that is something to think about. I know in particular DNV, which is one of the accreditation agencies, they require that, and what they're looking for is traceability. So if something does go wrong, you can trace it back to what devices were used, and they will ask for calibration certificates of your electrical safety analyzer for 2-3 years prior to that as well, and you can show them that traceability from your certificates.
That uncovers a whole separate webinar subject about metrology for medical device quality assurance,
Yeah.
and a best practice in any case. So we're not going to do too much, not going to take a deep dive on that today, but we will come back to that, and we have talked about that in the past. So there's at least one webinar that you can go refer to take a little bit deeper dive in there. But just saying, we definitely agree. It is a metrology thing. So if you've never heard of that before, which I suspect that many of you have not, we're going to help. We have helped. We're going to continue to help improve your knowledge and know-how, improve your learning about that.
All right, so I think now we'll jump to a future state, in that when you take those that data, right? Do you feel electrical safety testing is a good predictor for future failures? So if you do collect data, do you think that you can predict failures or do some predictive maintenance with that data? This one's also a simple yes, no, so probably don't need to run it as long.
Yeah, the poll's been launched, Mike, and I'll give it a second, 5 more seconds before we close it.
And data drives a couple of things here, right? One is this predictive maintenance, and the other would be AEMs. You need data to substantiate those. So I think data and values are a valuable source of information there. So what did the poll say?
69% indicated yes, and 31% indicated no.
Interesting. Be interesting to understand those who said no. Why do you think it's no?
I will speak to the 31% because in my career in the field, I was also the database administrator. And one of the things that I ran into is collecting good data only is good data if you use the data. So there is plenty of times that you have really useful data, but no one uses it. And putting data into the database, but no one has the means or time to manage the data or even do a linear progression on the data. Or, so it doesn't do a prediction until someone goes, wait a minute, this looks like a trend. And then they go look at the history and go, oh, yeah, that was a problem. Oops. So a third of it is, as we're looking at manpower, as we're looking at resources, is someone actually doing, forbid what I'm about ready to say, the math?
Yeah.
I love how you're giggling on it, but it's true. I mean, is
No, it
anyone
is.
looking at the data?
Look, even if it was as simple as something silly like a whole lot of the medical devices have a removable power cord, even if it's strain relieved down, it's easily removable and replaceable. A lot of times, in the old days, we used to cut off the power plug and replace it with an aftermarket one, which has fraught with other injected new problems. But if you just replace that removable power cord with a new one, how often are you doing that, and how much money are you spending on replaceable power cords? I mean, do I care that much about that? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's in the weeds, but on the other hand, maybe it's not. And power supplies is another it's a good predictor of power supply issues. So just saying, I mean, that's why I thought the no's were interesting.
Let me move on to the next question. Thanks for your inputs here, guys. And while they answer that question, I'll also bring one from the field. So the question for the poll is, do you accept the vendor's electrical safety testing results for incoming devices? So think about it in terms of incoming inspection. So as you guys answer that, there was one question that came in recently, which was, how often does the device fail an electrical safety test?
Well, if yeah, it's a good one.
I know Jerry's answer.
Yeah.
It depends.
I'm restraining myself.
So I'll give Jerry's answer. It depends, and I'll give a little qualifier on that one. One of the things in the field that I found regularly, especially I like Jerry's example of the power cords, if it was a portable device, the cords failed regularly because the end users were not nice. They did not like power cords. And I'm not saying they chew on power cords, but they would pull the power cords out at weird angles. And so the ground test was a key identifier to failures of the electrical safety test, because the cords were getting used, not getting used nicely, but getting used in the environments they were getting used in. So you would find the grounding failure, infusion pumps, vital signs monitors would fail the electrical safety test simply because the ground resistance would fail, because the cords were getting worn either on either the distal or proximal end, or they're breaking internally because of that failure. So doing that test was predictive to a bigger problem coming up, and by replacing either the cords or the ends, like Jerry was saying, solve problems ahead of time, because you were doing the electrical safety tests and failing them, and then doing the maintenance required.
And not that any other hospital staff will stand back 5 foot from the wall and unplug it by the cord.
Shh, we don't talk about that.
Including environmental services that are doing the cleaning between patients in the rooms.
All right, the poll is closed, and we have 38% that said yes, and 62% said no.
Okay, I'm going to weigh in on this one, and you can go either way, and it really depends on where the device is being tested. Are you witnessing that device being tested? Now, if a device comes in from a manufacturer and they've got a service report with it, it shows the electrical safety test, well, that was done back at their facility. It has been shipped. There's issues that could come up from it rattling around in a box. So you do not know what the current situation with that unit is unless you test it and you get back to, okay, on your incoming inspection, yes, you have to do that. Now, I will also back up a little bit and say, if I'm standing there with the manufacturer, he's got his electrical safety analyzer out, the unit's in its final location, and he puts down his values, I think that would suffice to it. Now, that is a personal opinion, but I have witnessed that, and I think that would probably suffice at that point.
The only argument I would say, I tend to agree with you, Boyd. The only argument that I would say is, do we know when the last time that electrical safety analyzer carried in by that field service engineer or installation team was calibrated? And we probably don't know that unless they somehow document it or we required it as a policy in our program to even have them come in and do testing that we did not do. But anyway, that would be the only thing. Aside from that, I tend to agree.
Yeah, and there are times that you'll get devices in that you may not, you get a new X-ray room installed. You may not have everything or know exactly everything you need to do the complete electrical safety on that. A lot of that is done by the electrician or the installer for going around. You know, we're talking a lot about portable, but now you have to look when things are permanently installed. Okay, what is the bonding to the ground for each conductive surface within that room? So it brings up a whole different set of issues that you can get into there as well.
And I think you guys are both bringing up a really good point that's centered around documentation, because I've seen hospitals have service level agreements with vendors where they will accept a vendor's documentation, but in that service agreement, they state that the documentation for the test equipment and the values will be recorded, and the certain requirements will be documented and maintained, and there'll be these levels of risk are going to be looked at and agreed upon, and it's all centered around that level of risk and it be well documented and agreed upon. So I think there's all really good considerations there, and the key point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's documented and the risk is considered.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the audience agrees with you guys. There are some comments that have come in, you know, that they accept the vendor's test, but they do it again during incoming inspection, or they accept the supplier test only if it's a part or transducer from the OEM. So I think the jury's out on this one, but I do want to make sure we move on to the next topic here.
Good, good.
Which is going to be NFPA 99. So we're going to do a rapid fire, maybe 2 30-second polls, so 2 questions in a row. The first being, what edition of NFPA 99 is recognized by CMS for electrical safety? Is it 2012, 2015, 2018, 2020, or 2021?
And just so everybody remembers what CMS is, it is the organization that decides whether your hospital gets reimbursed for cost of care for patients in your facility, where the government pays for that patient's care. So in most cases in the United States, hospitals are very dependent on Medicare and Medicaid patients, which are paid for by the government. CMS decides yes or no. So they're a big, powerful, they have a lot of clout when it comes to this.
Yeah, and remember, CMS is who also approves each of the accreditation agencies. Whatever CMS says, the Accreditation's Joint Commission, DNV, all of these others out there have to abide by that.
Okay, and so I'm closing the poll now, and I'll share the results. So 28% indicated NFPA 2012, 18% indicated 2015, 25% indicated 2018, 10% 2020, and 19% 2021. So I will hide that and go right.
Yeah, I'll ask the panelists to remember those answers as we move to the next one, which is, what is the current edition of NFPA 99? Is it 2012, 2015, 2018, 2020, and 2021?
We'll give it another 10 seconds and the polls will close. And the poll is now closing. And the results are 2012, 10%, 2015, 12%, 2018, 37%, 2020, 21%, and 2021, 20%.
So this is interesting. And the real question here is, what is the requirement that drives action in our medical device quality assurance program, especially in the United States where NFPA 99 kind of rules? I mean, that's the one that everybody is adhering to because that's what everybody is being audited to, because CMS has stated what they're going to accept. So 2021 is the latest version, and the question is what changed? And so I'll let my other panelists talk a little bit about what changed and what matters.
So the meat and potatoes between well, let's step back and answer the question from the previous poll is, what is CMS looking at? So
I'll jump in on that right there.
Perfect. Wait.
The CMS, they in 2016, they adopted the 2012 edition of NFPA 99 for medical devices, and that's still the current one that's out there for according to CMS. So your surveyors that are coming in, that is the edition that they are surveying to. And before we talk about the changes that are between 2012 and 2021, I'm going to go back just a little bit to some of the changes that 2012 brought upon that a lot of people are not familiar with. One of the things in there, a lot of places still do lead isolation testing. Now, manufacturers absolutely are required to. I think it's a good idea, the best practice to do it after you've repaired the unit, but that is no longer a requirement in there. The previous versions of NFPA 99 also required you to do lead to lead for leakage. That is no longer a requirement. Really, the only thing that is required, or the only things basically that's required for leakage current, is your standard leakage current, which it has to be on and off. If you're not aware, when a unit is turned off, it has to be less than 100 microamps. When it's turned on, it has to be less than 500. And then all leads to ground, and that has to be less than 500 microamps. So that was some changes that come about then that actually a lot of people haven't are not quite aware of. Also, and I'm going to go back to a previous thing that's in there as well. We talked about replacing power cords and power plugs. Well, within that section, one of the things it says when we are replacing power plugs, which another change is we're no longer required to use hospital grade. We can make the determination if it's a quality device or not. But one of the things that's required in there is that ground wire, when you attach it, must be longer than your hot or your neutral, because it says in the event that it comes disconnected from the plug, the ground wire has to be the last one that becomes disconnected. So guys, when you're out there and redoing these plugs, always remember to make that ground wire just a little bit longer than you do everything else. Also in there, when we're talking about doing leakage testing here of systems, if we go to our endoscopy department, and there's many in what I call endo towers, it'll have your light source, it'll have your endo camera, it'll have a television, your LCD or your monitor on top. You are required to test for leakage current as one system in that. So you don't test each individual one for leakage current. You have to test it as one system. So whatever that's plugged into, if it's one power strip, you have to test your leakage current through that. But you still have to test your ground to each individual device, because we don't know whether the individual device is grounded or not unless we go to that, which also brings up another thing here. If we are allowed to use extension cords and power strips within the facility. The first one here, if you're using a power strip, anything that is plugged into that power strip must be tested again as one unit. So if you've got an anesthesia machine, a blood warmer, and a patient monitor plugged into it, you are required to test that as one unit because, again, that leakage current is combined in there. Now, if we do use extension cords or power strips, it says they have to be tested periodically. The issue is, okay, how in the world do you find those extension cords? How do you find the power strip that's out there? That's a whole nother issue. We see a lot of hospitals just say their policy is no, we're not going to use them just due to the difficulty of testing those. Another thing that is in there too that is required when we go into the OR, many of our ORs have isolated power in them. We are not allowed to do safety testing through isolated power. It has to be on normal power. And you may ask why. Well, there's times you may see an anesthesia machine roll into an x-ray room or somewhere else, or maybe down to your ER. So you cannot do your safety testing through that isolated power. You're going to have to pull you a long cord, your extension cord or something. So you're testing all your devices on normal power here. And talking about testing here too, in ground wire, a lot of people don't realize when we do a ground test, we are also required to flex that power cord, not just at the power plug, but at the device end as well, near the strain relief that's in there. Other things that it's kind of interesting too, if you've got a device that can be connected to a patient during defibrillation, you have to know that in that manual will have to tell you that's a defibrillator or a defib-proof device. Normally that's in there, but that is something that I found kind of interesting years ago that I didn't realize, quite honestly.
And there's a symbol for that, by the way, that you should be looking for. It's the man in the box with defibrillator paddles on left and right. That's the symbol by which you will know that's, quote, defibrillator proof. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. And one last thing here, and this is always for biomed guys, manuals. There is a stipulation in NFPA 99, and I will give you the exact one. It is 10.5.3.1.1 and 10.5.3.1 that stipulates that they have to give manuals. Now, it is a little nebulous. It does say schematics in there, but it also talks about that may not have to be a full service manual. But sometimes you can use that with your vendor to assist in getting manuals out of them. It's always worth a shot because we know that the vendors, many times that's hard to get the service information out of them.
Very important in this current controversy about right to repair.
And this brings up a really good point with the differences between the 2012 and the 2021 is the requirements between the two versions. The testing values and the requirements are reviewing the two. They are the same. Now, what happens is the articles in the subsections have changed the points. They provide a little bit of clarification. So, for example, what Boyd just said about the manuals in the 2021, this is now in 10.5.3.2. where
10.5.3.2. Okay.
Correct. So what
one.
Boyd just quoted is absolutely right for 2012, but it got updated to 10.5.3.2 now. So this is the major difference between 2021 and 2012 is they've updated the subsections in each chapter. So your testing requirements and your references. So when your fire marshal comes in and starts looking for stuff, if this is the individual that you're looking to. And this is going to be more relevant for your outpatient surgery centers, your clinics, opposed to your main hospital. Your fire marshal will typically be more concerned with your outlying procedures. CMS might go out to your outside facilities. But this is where your 2021 probably will come in and be more relevant. It's just what article number you're referring to.
And
right,
one
guys.
thing I would
One final
thing I
thought.
would encourage everybody with your technician, don't just leave it up to your manager. It's about a 10-minute read, 15-minute read. Go read chapter 10 of your NFPA 99. Everybody should read through that.
By the way, NFPA allows you to view that on their website. You have to pay money to get the download, but you can review that on the website. So everybody has the opportunity as long as they have internet access.
So guys, thanks so much for all these thoughts. We're running up on time. I'm sorry I won't be able to get to any Q&A today, but I did just want to tell everyone that, if you did find this helpful, if you did find value in this discussion, please do refer your friends to watch this recorded webinar. It'll be on our website because there's some important content in here and some key learnings that I think everyone could benefit from. And there's also additional webinars and free training, white papers, application notes on our website as well, if you wanted to dig more into the topic. So with that, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of you for joining and being in the audience today, and to our 3 great panelists for a great discussion and a lot of enlightening topics. So thank you all. I really appreciate you guys, and we will get to those questions that you sent in by email. So thank you.